So profiting from Betfair trading is quite a simple process. You have to lay at a lower price than you back at. And most of the trading strategies that you've seen are quite clearly definable. However, you can profit from tales of the unexpected. If you're interested in learning to trade on Betfair, then visit the BetAngel Academy, where you have detailed structured Betfair trading courses. Or why not visit our website where you can download a free trial of BetAngel Professional, but also visit the forum where you can get detailed images, examples and downloadable files. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon if you want notification of new videos as they're released. So there are many different ways of trading. And some of them are intuitive, some of them are counterintuitive, but they all sort of rely upon you making more when you win than you would do when those inevitable losses occur. And there is actually a great video that I did which explains this in a lot more depth and gives you a structure to the way that you should trade. And it involves potential wins, the amount that you lose, and a strike rate, which links all of those things together. So the potential for profitable trading is always there. You just have to sort of play around with those metrics. Sometimes, you could have a really high winning rate, but then face potentially large losses, but the two could balance out, or you could just win little bits very frequently and have little losses. There are many ways of actively trading. But what I want to talk to you about today is a method of trading that's sort of a bit counterintuitive, and it makes you look a fool very regularly, which is why I like it. Because sometimes the most popular strategies, the stuff that you do most frequently, that you're attempting to really push forward on, sometimes sort of lead you down the wrong path, because everybody loves to win, don't they? I mean, they do at the end of the day. But sometimes the strategies that win regularly don't deliver long-term profits. So the strategy that I'm going to talk to you about today is about trading the unexpected. It's about tales of the unexpected, tales of unusual things. It's about stuff that happens that you perhaps wouldn't think would happen, that are difficult to price, that you may not have within your model. So it's a common myth that you have to understand value to be able to trade effectively. So the way that most people trade is they sort of say, well, the price is here, I think it should be there, and therefore I'll wait for the price to get there. And that's very often how people will trade. But sometimes, the price in the market is a bit ambiguous. It's difficult to pinpoint. Have a look at the political markets, because there's no definable measure of where the price should be on a political market. You could find that it changes overnight, or there's a resignation, or something happens that radically changes that market. And to be able to discount that accurately is really, really hard. So when you're actually trading, the price could be here and then end here, but in between it could go all over the place. And, as far as the market's concerned, it's efficient because it's ended up at the same price that it started, or achieved some sort of value. But you're not actually trading that most of the time. You're trading that movement that occurs in and around all of that activity. So it's always important to bear that in mind and to understand that that's primarily what your objective is as a trader. Price activity occurs, volatility occurs, underlying circumstances change, and you're trading that. And probably what you're doing is you're going into the market for a set period of time and you're looking to take advantage of that. So, if you look at a range of sports, you can sort of understand how this can occur. So I'll give you some examples. A tennis player is, 2 sets up and a breakup, or a set up and a breakup, and they're serving for the match perhaps, and then they don't, they mess it up, suddenly their confidence goes, and then so the price at that particular point within the market was probably correct, but that turning point was ambiguous. It was difficult to identify. You couldn't price that into the market, because at that score line, at that point in the match, at that particular moment, the odds were correct. However, it didn't tell the path of what could happen in the future. Probably the best example I could give you on tennis was Andy Murray, can't remember which year it was in the final of the Australian Open. And he went to serve, and his rhythm was completely broken when a feather fluttered down from above him. And he saw it and he waited to do the serve, and then he removed it from the playing surface, and that was actually the turning point within the match. So a rain break could create a turning point in a tennis match. There are many points at which everything changes. In football, it tends to typically be the half-time break. But it could be any number of other things that occur within the match, perhaps a fluky goal or a sending off or something unusual that happens that just breaks the flow. So you'll often find in professional sports, opponents are trying to break the flow of the people they're playing against or the team they're up against in order to get them out of that particular zone. And if they can get them out of the zone, then the opportunity is created. But at that point within the market at which they're doing that is perfectly priced. There is no particular value there, but as a trader you're not necessarily looking for the right price. You're looking for that movement that occurs as opposed to whether the price is correct or not. So yeah, if we look at football, that's probably the best example is when Liverpool won the Champions League and they were 3-0 down at half time. They'd had a sort of fortuitous route to the final, although deserved obviously. But in the final they were given no chance and they were 3-0 down at half time and everybody just wrote them off completely. However, you go in at half time, you get the opportunity to change things around, and that little window of opportunity at the beginning of the second half can change the match completely. So very often I'll scan the half-time scores, look at the circumstances within a match, and then take a position based upon something perhaps happening early on. If that early goal comes, the match can turn around because the team that was in the lead starts to get a little bit panicky and worry about the potential for not winning the match easily, and suddenly everything can change and you've got no ability to change tactics easily once you're into that second half. But this is why it can make you look a fool as well, because if you're trading an event and you take a position and like the team is 3 or 4-0 up and you sort of think, well, here's my opportunity, I'm going to do this, they could still go on and win the match easily, and it just may never happen. So this strategy tends to be characterized by lots of small losses and then the occasional big win. But of course, when you get the big win, everybody will just say that you're lucky. But no, it's a tactic. You're looking for an opportunity. Another example I could give you here was when the Olympics were at Rio, they had the 60-kilometer bike race. And I pay attention to everything that's going on in front of me to try and understand if an opportunity could be created. But when you look at that particular race, it was on a very treacherous course. So I looked at that and, there were a couple of riders had fallen, but I didn't pay that much attention to it until it started to rain. And at that point, I just thought, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to start looking to lay the leader on the hope. And it sounds horrible to say that, on the hope that they fall, but you understand where I'm coming from here, that there would be an opportunity at some point from a trading perspective. Didn't know how to price the market, couldn't particularly understand what that price should be, but I just went in there on the basis that something may happen, and sure enough it did. So that's how you're positioning these types of trades. You're basically slightly speculative, but you're saying something has happened that has changed the underlying circumstances here, and therefore I'm going to put a trade into the market, and the potential for a payoff is there. But that potential may be 2 or 3 efforts down the line in order for you to get your potential payoff. But typically it's something that's done at low odds, where you think that there's a situation that's developing that is presenting itself to a potentially profitable trade, and that's why you're doing it. But you've got to have some level of insight. If you just go into the market and do this on every single market, it will all average out, because at that particular point within the market, everything was priced perfectly based upon those circumstances. But what it didn't price was the uncertainty that was going to take place within the future. So this brings me round to where and why I did this video this weekend, because this weekend, as I'm recording this video, it's the London Marathon, and this produced one of those strange payoffs that you wouldn't particularly expect. And there are some coincidences that come in which show you the benefit of being able to take part in a sport and understand a sport well. So the London Marathon, I used to do a lot of running, and I ran the London Marathon twice. I'm trying to remember the years that I ran it in. 93 and 96, I think, were the years that I ran it in. And I used to enjoy doing all sorts of different types of road races. And eventually, as I got better and better and I could do longer distance races, I suddenly had my eyes on doing the London Marathon. So originally I did it quite seriously, and then, as I started stepping up to marathon distance, I found that I just didn't really get on with it very well. What would happen was, I'd run the first half marathon about typical half marathon pace. I'd run for about another 7 miles. I'd get to about 20 miles, and then everything would go wrong, basically. I just couldn't push on And people who've done the marathon will know exactly what I've done. I've just hit the wall, and I really struggled to get over the wall. And therefore, the marathon wasn't my favourite distance. So what relevance does this have to Betfair trading? Well, there is a market for the London Marathon, and curiosity overwhelms me on every market. So if I'm watching a sports event, whether it's the boat race, a marathon, athletics, football, tennis, any sport, I noticed Betfair have listed surfing recently. I have no idea how that market's going to go, but I will probably have a look at it at some point. And on this particular year, when I did this trade, it was the London Marathon market that I was looking at. And having run the London Marathon in the past, I sort of thought it would be worth a look just to see how the market was priced. Wasn't expecting to do any trade, and it just seemed like a sensible thing to have a look at the market, understand what was going on in there. So on this particular year, the favourite was Paula Radcliffe, and she'd broken the world record, which still stands, in 2003, which is a hell of an achievement. But she was running again in 2005, and she was expected to do pretty well, and indeed she did do well. She dominated the race pretty much from start to finish. But when I was watching the race and looking at the Betfair markets, as she came up to that critical period around the 20-mile mark, I was thinking, I wonder what price she is. So I went on to Betfair, had a look at the market. Lo and behold, she was 101 to lay. Basically, they were saying that she had won it, but there were still 6 miles or so left to run on the marathon. So I just thought, well, you know, she does look as though she's sort of pretty much in control. There are a few people a little bit further back. But I just put in a speculative order to lay at 101 and just thought, well, when she goes through this tougher period, maybe she'll begin to slow down. Her split times will begin to decrease, having been through this experience myself. And then maybe the market will start to reprice it. So I was looking for just like a little bump of maybe 5 or 6 ticks or something like that, based upon what could actually happen. And as she got towards the 21st mile, lo and behold, she stopped. So all of a sudden it was like panicking back onto my laptop again to see what had happened, and her price went all the way from 101 out to 1.5. Now, the market at that point, and probably other people knew, like me, that that was a tricky part of the race to actually run through. So as a consequence, when I saw this happening, I did wonder exactly what was going on. But basically, her price went from 101 to 150 because she stopped. Little did we realise at the time is she stopped for a toilet break. So this is one of the things that we're talking about here that is unexpected. How could you possibly price that into a market? There was no mathematician out there that could have discounted into the price the fact that that was going to happen. So yeah, this was one of the things that Paula Radcliffe probably regrets. Well, she wouldn't regret it because she won the race eventually, but one of the things that probably gets dragged out repeatedly for Paula is this moment that she stopped live on TV in the 2005 London Marathon to go to the toilet. But nonetheless, what happened in the market was that dramatic move, and by the time I realised what was going on, because if you have run as well, you would have experienced that too, not only going through the wall, but sometimes your stomach cramps up and there's nothing that you can do about it apart from stop and go for a wee or whatever. Funny subject to be talking about, but that's what happened. So I instantly figured out what was going on, waited a couple of seconds to see if she was going to continue running, and sure enough she did. So yeah, for just a few seconds work, a few minutes work, which all occurred within a few seconds, price rocketed out because everybody thought she was pulling out of the race, but it was absolutely fine, and sure enough she returned to 101 and went on to win the race easily. So when you look at this type of trade, these are the sort of things you're looking for. There's no way you could have possibly predicted that, and I was in the market for another reason, but you're looking at moments within the market where you possibly could be seeing a turning point. That you have to assume that the market's pretty efficient most of the time. It's not always, but it's pretty efficient most of the time. But it's only based upon what has happened to that point, not necessarily what's going to happen in the future. Yes, a little bit of the future can be discounted. There'll be a little bit of variability. But the sort of positions that we're taking here are basically saying what has happened before isn't what's going to happen in the future. There's a critical point at which we're reaching here where the price could change, and I'm going to take advantage of that by trading. Now, I had no idea that Paula Radcliffe was going to do that. I was in the market for a somewhat slightly different reason, but you'll be amazed how often these unusual things happen. It could be in a football match where a goal happens accidentally, or there's some strange decision that takes place, or just some freaky event. On tennis, it could be a rain break, or it could be the shadow moving across the course, one of these things. If you've got some insight into a sport and you're looking for a little opportunity, you'll probably be able to get into the market at a reasonable time. And then the potential for the payoff is there. The thing to remember is that payoff isn't going to be spectacular all of the time. It's more likely that you'll have loads of little losses along the way, and then you'll get that eventual big payoff. So you've got to be prepared to put in little bits of money, look foolish frequently, and then eventually get that big payoff. And this is one of the reasons that people don't do this too often. And especially if you sort of try and tweet out about something that you're trying to do, you'll look like a fool on a regular basis. And when you win, people will just say, oh, you just got lucky there. But in fact, it's actually quite a nice little tactic. So something slightly unusual, but I thought it was worth bringing up this weekend simply because we've got the London Marathon coming, and that's always one great example of this particular strategy that I'll remember.